All right. Hello. Good morning. It is Monday, December 27th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Logan and Lou here from Lucky Trader. Lou, how was Christmas? Enjoyable, hopefully.
Yeah, it was a good week. I stayed in Denver, and I mean, obviously, COVID is kind of a big news story again. So, didn't travel, but stayed here. Had some friends here. Um, so it was good. It was a nice little time off, a few extra days, and now we're back to NFTs pumping again, which was nice to see, like right after Christmas. So, excited to be here.
Yeah, that's going to be a large portion of what we talk about today. Kind of end of year takes from yourself as well as anybody in the audience, and then also just chatting about kind of the general market trend, at least from the last few days, which of course has been up only, at least as it pertains to most all projects. So we'll get into that in just a second. For those who are joining, because this week, you know, and a little bit beyond, I guess, a full week is decidedly quiet as a result of everybody taking advantage of holidays and whatnot. We are kind of repurposing today's show to not necessarily focus so much on what's coming. Typically, we'd focus on what's coming in the week. There's really not much happening this week. To talk about, yeah, kind of year-end stuff. Is the NFT bull market back? Chatting a little bit about the SOS airdrop, if and when we've made any purchases using that or claimed it or whatever, and go from there. So I guess maybe the place to start then, Lou, is as a result of this kind of recent movement, and I'm talking like what, last 48 hours? Like if you go to the project rankings page at luckytrader.com, I'm sorted on amount right now. So this is day over day changes. Last 24 hours, day over day changes. I mean, look at the green. Um, and even if you scroll out a little bit more to like the week view, week over week, there's some red in there, but for the most part, it's again overwhelmingly green as it pertains to both floor prices and volume. We had chatted quite a bit, prior to this week about maybe expectations about the market not performing so strongly, with people looking to harvest losses or, looking to just be a little less active, book fewer gains heading into the final week of taxable events here. But we've actually kind of seen the opposite of that. So what's your take? I know it's only been 48 hours, but in terms of NFT markets, that's a long time. Typically we think of that as a long time. What's your take? Bull market back on? And if so, why?
I mean, everyone got airdropped thousands of dollars. And I think the bullish part to it is they aren't cashing it out. They are reinvesting it within the ecosystem. So, some people got billions of SOS that, depending on when you sold it, was a couple Ethereum up to like 10 Ethereum, like depending on how much you sold and when you sold it. But a lot of people are taking those to blue chips that maybe, say you sold this off for 7 Ethereum, you've never had a cool cat before, they go and buy a cool cat. Or, they have 2 Ethereum, so they buy something in the 2 Ethereum range. So it seems like people were reinvesting it within NFTs versus withdrawing it to cash. Not to say we're not financial advisors here as far as tax implications of it, but it is funny that people had this whole tax idea where we're harvesting losses and then immediately claim thousands of dollars back and
So great.
reinvest it. So yeah, that was the big one. And Mutant Apes made a pump, I think partially similar vein, where people just got this, Christmas airdrop basically of money and are trying to buy into things that they haven't been able to afford maybe before. And from harvesting losses over time, they now, like, over the week they may have built up 5 or 6 Ethereum, and then this put them over the edge. So I think that's really where it came from.
Yeah, we should. There's a few things there that I want to pull out of what you just said. Firstly, Mutant Apes. It's just been absolutely ridiculous charge. We were talking last week. We both have Mutant Ape exposure. Full disclosure. We were talking last week about like, oh man, if Mutant Apes got to 10, like that would be kind of silly, right? Um, and now we're, in the course of a few days, went from like 7.5 to 8 to 8.8 to like 9.5 to immediately overnight. Like I had a message, I woke up this morning, I had a message from a friend that was like, what the hell happened last night? And it's like, again, over 11.4 floor we're looking at right now. I want to go back though before we get into maybe some broader stuff. Other things that you had pulled out of that. We talked about the tax stuff. If you haven't already, there's like 5 days left if you count today in December. A few things you should know about taxes, NFTs, crypto taxes, with the airdrop with SOS and Open DAO. Please do head over to luckytrader.com. Take advantage of this article from RKO Tax, right? Notable actual people that know what they're doing, accountants, not just Lou and I spewing random things about taxes. So you can go ahead and take advantage of that. And then you did mention as well, for those who are watching who didn't know, and again, this is not financial advice, please do your own research specifically here regarding the security of interacting with this smart contract and beyond. But the talk of the town over the last few days has been SOS, not affiliated with OpenSea in any way. So this is not official. It's not like the OpenSea token airdrop or anything. But had you bought specifically NFTs on OpenSea prior to December 23rd, when the snapshot was taken, you are eligible to potentially claim some of these. And yes, as Lou mentioned, it could have been or could still be very profitable for you. Price chart, a little bit of volatility, of course, here in the last 24 hours. If I zoom out, it's not even 7 days old, but if I zoom out, right, Lou's mentioning you could have potentially sold up in this range for like 7 Ethereum, depending on how much you got, of course. Like I saw some of Pranksy's transactions. I think he redeemed like 83 ETH or something in one transaction, which is like absolutely bonkers.
Well, but also added, it was something like claimed somewhere around like 40 billion and then put some to the liquidity pool and then bought up to 50 billion. So was working in the liquidity pool for a little bit. I wasn't. No, I'm saying Pranksy was.
Right.
But
right. Absolutely
people
bonkers.
that were doing the liquidity pool were pretty successful in that short term period.
Yeah, absolutely bonkers. It was it was a Christmas gift, like quite literally. I don't know. I don't know if the developer, I'm blanking on the name right now. It's like X9.
The 9X9.
Yeah. I'm not sure
I don't know if it's supposed to be like 9x9x9 or something, but
yeah, I don't know, but I'm not sure if they had planned specifically to drop on Christmas as like a, kind of like a gifty type thing, because that's what it is, right? I mean, this was more or less
like around Christmas was the goal.
Yeah. But if I could toot my own horn here for a second, Lou, totally had no clue this is coming, of course, like absolutely no clue this is coming. But I did send out this tweet on December 23rd about expecting a stealth drop. I was talking, this was pure speculation, by the way, pure speculation, but I was talking that like I had somewhat anticipated that somebody would drop. I was kind of thinking Dom might drop something, Dom Hoffman of Lou and Vine and, all those other Blip Maps, all those projects, right? I was sort of thinking that Dom might drop something, kind of like he dropped Corruptions, right? Like kind of randomly again. Everything he's dropped has been sort of random. We haven't gotten it yet. Maybe we'll get a New Year Dom drop, but nevertheless, I did fully expect something. It was not SOS that I expected, but it worked out nonetheless. We had some questions in here. Might as well get right into this. Great mutant there, by the way. You sell your SOS. I did claim. Well, I claimed across wallets. Of course, that was another luxury here, right? Is that if you had, operated with more than one wallet on OpenSea, you were subject to claims across wallets. So I was able to claim across my wallets. I did sell the majority of my SOS, and I sold a little early, of course, right?
Yeah.
These are tricky. These are really tricky like situations always, right? Like there's definitely some mimetic value here, but more or less, it's difficult to, I can see the pros and cons here, right? The side where you're like, dude, it was free money that you didn't have, like you don't need to rush into selling it. But then the other side is like, it's free money that like you might as well capitalize and get, you know? So I did sell the majority of mine. I'm still holding some, but the majority, Lou. How about you?
Yeah, I sold. I somewhat learned from ENS, but my first instinct on these is to sell half. It's the idea that you don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to go up or not, especially with like Christmas, and the
Yeah.
idea that people weren't sure what it was or not. So I didn't claim it right away. I
Yeah,
waited a
me
little
neither.
bit for other people who were claiming it, which I think helped with timing of like when it pumped a little. Um, and so I sold off about half of it right away to get, I don't know, half an Ethereum or whatever it was, because it's like, it's free money. And then yeah, I I sold the
These
other half.
sickos.
Part of it was timing, right? Where it's like the next 2 days, you're not going to be at your computer all day to
Yep.
be monitoring it.
Yep.
So that was the other side of me where I was like, well, now my second half of selling it is worth more than the first half was. So I was like, might as well just do this while I know I'm getting money out of it,
Yeah.
versus come back in 2 days and it falls off, because that happened a little bit with ENS where it went way up and then it came down, but then the Coinbase added it and it leveled it off a little bit. So this one seemed less, I don't want to say legit. I don't think that's the correct word here, but to me, this is more like you're betting on a new team. Whereas ENS, I already knew like the story of ENS and why ENS could be a thing long term. This one, once I heard it wasn't actually directly connected to OpenSea,
Yeah.
um, I thought it made it a little riskier. Now
Yeah.
we've gotten a little more involvement with people and information behind it as far as like the legitimacy of it and like what they're trying to do with the DAO. So I'm a little more confident in it now, like especially if like Chris is saying he didn't sell all of it. I'd be a lot more comfortable now with what we know, not
Yeah.
selling all of it, than that first day when it's like, where did this thing come from?
I remember looking at the Twitter for SOS, which is the underscore open DAO, right? That's what it is. Open DAO,
Yeah,
SOS
open
beat the
DAO.
token. Um, I remember looking at it. I think it was Christmas Eve night. Might have
Right.
been Christmas night. I'm not exactly sure, but it was, they had 125 followers. And I was kind of like, and
Yeah.
I think might have messaged it in one of our internal group chats. And I was like, hey, anybody heard of this? And then, or it might have been you that actually pushed it to me. I'm not exactly sure how it worked, but I remember seeing it so early and I was like, weird. And then of course, like, this is just general practice here. Things like this happen from time to time, and it is not always safe, to
Yeah.
just blindly interact. And so what a lot of people, you might have seen the next day, a lot of folks were like, whoa, hey, is this safe? Firstly, like, interacting with this smart contract, is this safe? So there were breakdowns from like notable people. And as you started to see notable collectors, that should not necessarily be your signal. Of course, none of this is financial advice. None of this is actionable advice. Please do, move based on your own risk tolerance and your own research regarding the security practices here. But, and when you started to see people like Keyboard Monkey and Pranksy, right, and D's and others who interacted with this, it does give you a general sense of calmness, right? That maybe this is legitimate enough to claim, which of
Hmm.
course you can do. Again, for those who are unaware of what we're even talking about, the Open DAO, this is the token distribution chart. This is kind of what the plan is here, more or less looking to reward and align creators and collectors in the NFT ecosystem, and by doing so, kind of provide funds via the SOS token for helping emerging artists. helping new collectors, helping new communities, helping compensate victims of scams. I'm a little curious to see kind of how all of this unfolds, but that's what you're seeing in that distribution chart down at the bottom. So if you had bought NFTs on OpenSea prior to December 23rd, whatever block it indicates here up at the top, the snapshot was taken at block 138, whatever. Then you are eligible to claim this, and yes, there's money to be there. But of course, do your own research. I think it's just super interesting. We've seen now, as you mentioned, some of the legitimacy through those collectors, of course, right? Like as notable people started to participate here, there was that sense of, at least in my mind, a sense of like anxiety reduction. I didn't feel
them
like
buying,
right. That too.
Prinksy buying on top of it. When
And
people
then,
are buying it, that should give you a little more confidence than
right.
just everyone selling it right away. Because that's how the price will go up, is people are looking at it and saying, I want to buy into this.
Yeah. What's funny? Before I get to my next point, as you were talking about like being away from the computer, I don't know if you saw this tweet from Farouk, but like this is fully what I anticipate. What people, regardless, right? Like it didn't matter if it was SOS or NFTs with the bull market. You know what I mean? I actually was pretty well subdued in terms of like my level of activity. Partly because I just got my booster shot yesterday and was like completely dead. So I had a little bit of a push into being inactive, but this is fully what I expect people's lives were like, especially heavily active NFT traders and collectors for the last couple of days, is like watching this SOS thing. Because you're right, you were talking about earlier, at one point in time it could have been 2 Ethereum, and then like you blinked and it was whatever your allocation was worth 7 Ethereum. Like this was legitimate amounts of money, like lots and lots of money for a lot of active collectors. I'm curious to see what actually happens. We saw SOS has already like made some announcements regarding collaboration. Is that the best way? Partnership? I'm not sure like the best way to frame these relationships. It's a little weird because DAO, right? Like not, it's not this centralized organization, but they I guess they're calling them partnership or strategic cooperation. I just went off my screen here.
Did you see there was Fuckrender did a drop yesterday, or an auction on one of his pieces where you had to bid with SOS.
Yeah. So there's a lot of this stuff like X.XYZ, right? Marketplace. I feel like there was one other. Was X.XYZ the really notable one? It must have been. And then there's another one this morning, Treasureland. I don't know what Treasureland is, but cross-chain NFT platform for NFT issuance, trading, collection. So
isn't that the
basically
whole
a marketplace.
point, though? Isn't the whole point they're supposed to be connected to OpenSea?
Well,
and they're going to go to other
SOS,
platforms.
the Open DAO?
Yeah, it's based on OpenSea activity.
Right. The distribution of 50% of the distribution.
Right, and then they're going to group up with these other ones.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what the plan is here, right? I mean, here's your kind of your Open DAO. This is the compensation. This is like the plan for this 20%, right? And then you have the 50% to airdroppers. Then you have 20% for staking incentives. So you can stake your SOS to earn more SOS, and then liquidity providers incentive as well. So that's kind of your whole pie chart in terms of the distribution. It doesn't give, too much indication of what there are no future plans initiated or, elaborated on right here on the Open DAO website. But I think exactly what you're pointing to is I'm not exactly sure it's a partnership with OpenSea. That seems a little odd at this point in time. But people have like murmured about like this being your pseudo vampire attack, whereby this SOS Open DAO can now partner with these other entities and other organizations to potentially pull users away from OpenSea. Right, that's kind of what happened with SushiSwap and Uniswap. Right, is that SushiSwap forked Uniswap's code and then provided the incentives or made the incentives a little bit better and stole a whole ton of total value locked or DeFi funds. Not actually stole, but right, like had those funds move over to the Sushi Swap ecosystem as a result. So people have, I've seen a couple tweets about that kind of vampire attack type thing that might come. It's still way too early. Like this thing didn't exist. I'm sure there were plans, right? But this thing did not exist. Nobody knew the performance of this token or the performance or the, how much the NFT community would like latch hold to this. It's only been a couple days, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. We were talking about this previously. Kobe, Crypto Cobain, now just at Kobe, on one of the up onlys here recently, is talking, the fact that like ENS, SOS, all these others dropping tokens, like it's a way to attract users, right? And it's almost the expectation from him in that, I'm not going to quote him verbatim, it's a long time ago at this point, but like, is that most of these organizations are going to have to do something like this to pull users. You know what I mean? Like it is your total customer acquisition cost, much like in Web 2, right? If you want to call it that, people had to get sign up bonuses or whatever. Like this is the exact same thing. You're dropping tokens to people in a way to try and incentivize their use. Will OpenSea react to this? You'd think they're too large, right? Where they probably don't need to be rushed as a result of SOS. But, could you foresee a world in which OpenSea is like, oh shit, like now we definitely need to, even just from like a PR standpoint, like now we definitely need to incentivize our users because other folks are doing so for us, more or less.
Yeah. What's your take on just in general? Like I've been talking to people. What's your thought on just buying into these coins as their own, just like coins, even ENS and things like that, or even like buying into something like a Matic or Avalanche? Like, do you think people right now are trying to shift their allocations more towards these types of coins? Like we talk about P2E stuff a lot as what 2022 is going to be. And I feel like a lot of our discussion is sort of away from people having most of their portfolio in NFTs in the next year. Do you think people are going to look for things more like these tokens that are trying to do things other than just being JPEGs?
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I was talking to a friend earlier today about, everything right now that is bumping most mutants, right? Cool cats, apes in general, right? Is as a result of like some sort of expected or at least talked about utility. So I definitely think there is
and they're it's hard to call them like legacy projects at this point, but I mean, when it comes down to it, they're all projects that came out before like June that are repumping, right? For the most part, there's like the doodles in there that are newer, and some other stuff, but
I think it's like widely considered is a weird way to phrase this, I guess, but like that these are the blue chipish projects as well. So we have right now we're dealing with an error on the mutant ape collection. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of lag here. Obviously the floor is much, much higher. There's some weirdness with the serial numbers and mutant apes. So if you're on the Lucky Trader project rankings page, you will notice an error there for that one. We're aware of it and it's being worked on. Otherwise though, like if you take a look across this the green, like big greens here, I'm sorted in terms of volume. Like these are the blue chipish things, right? That we've been talking about for a whole long time. So you have your punks, you have apes, Clone X. I guess you could throw that in there. Cool cats, doodles, toads, right? Like that's the most recent bump. A little bit further down, but still tons and tons of volume. I'm sorted week over week, but if you look at day over day, it gets very, very green. Yeah, man, to go back to your question regarding like, what's your thought on buying some of these things, and shifting away from the NFTs themselves, but looking to get exposure to NFTs, like in different ways, like via tokens or ecosystems, right? Like Avalanche or Luna or whatever. I think, again, not financial advice. None of this is financial advice, but I do think it's like, it's almost an easy way. Easy is a terrible word to use. It's like a lazier way to be attached to Web3 and be attached to the NFTs without needing to pay so much attention or be so right. So like NFT projects themselves, I think, offer a stronger asymmetric upside. So like if you pick the right project, you can 100, 200x, right? And so while maybe participating at the protocol layer or like the blockchain layer, like if you bought AVAX instead of an AVAX NFT, right? You might not be able to 100x, but you also probably aren't going to zero, if that makes sense. So your downside is probably protected, your upside is limited, but you don't need to pay attention, right? Like you don't need to be in the streets every single day paying attention to what's happening with the NFT ecosystem or the tokens or the DeFi ecosystem. So I think there are definitely some merits there to, if you're looking to be a little less active, you want to be a little more passive, to moving away from the specific NFT projects and perhaps like piggybacking yourself to a couple either specific tokens, right? Like or protocols as well. The cool thing is like there are opportunities that kind of pop up every day, like token sets by chance. I think you're muted.
Is that just like a site?
Yeah, so token sets does like basically index funds. It's setting, like creating sets of tokens, right? But this is kind of like becoming more and more popular as well for people that are not super active but still want exposure to certain themes. So there are different ones. There's a metaverse one in here, metaverse index, right? If you didn't really want to pay attention to all the individual games,
yeah,
right, you can sort of create your index fund. Now this one is, the metaverse thing is cooled down. We talked about that last week. It's definitely cooled down, but this is a lazier way. I would anticipate like more and more NFT. Consider when the ape token comes out, in 2022, early 2022. Let's say you don't want to, bootstrap yourself to one particular ape or whatever, but you want some exposure to apes. Maybe you want some exposure to Volt, the Subducks token, and Milk, the Cool Cats token. Like there will probably be a token set here where you could do that as well and still gain exposure to those assets, just in a slightly different way.
Do you connect that to your MetaMask?
So yeah, I mean you can buy.
sell?
Yeah, you can buy. This is actually spoiler alert. This was on Token Sets, was on the Bankless airdrop guide as well. So yeah, you can like create an account with an email as well, but you can log in with MetaMask and buy right from, you can buy the coin right from Token Sets. But that is a way that I think it is interesting. Maybe we'll see more people doing that. I want to get back to this question from Piston. OpenSea looking to IPO. This is back to the SOS talk. And then, as John had mentioned, that the CFO, Brian Roberts, actually walked back that gingerly, a little, gingerly. He didn't give any clarification here as to if and when there would be some sort of community involvement or airdrop or whatever, right? He said they're basically, more or less, like they're considering all options. They want the community to be rewarded. Again, I think more things like the SOS token drop behooves users, one, because you actually gain access to that, but then two, hopefully put some pressure on OpenSea. Like if OpenSea doesn't drop a token, they're just going to get shit on so hard for it. Like sentiment will be terrible, and maybe it won't matter over the long run.
Why did they need to have a token? Why do people have to get like pressured into doing these things? Like,
I don't think they need to. But I fully expect that because of what we've seen, like with ENS, right? Because of what people have come to expect, that they're going to be rewarded, right? And so if OpenSea doesn't, like, let's say, this question from John, when Sea or Mask, if MetaMask does a token, which they've already like hinted pretty strongly at, if MetaMask does a token and rewards users in the same way that a lot of these other protocols and have rewarded users, and OpenSea doesn't, I just feel like sentiment will be so negative towards OpenSea, and it already is in lots of regards. There's just no other option. Show you not there yet. Rarible still bad. So we'll see. I don't think they need to drop a token. I'm just wondering if the pressure of these other, as more tokens drop, do they put themselves in a bucket that like they almost sort of have to, as a defense mechanism, as a like PR mechanism?
Yeah, I think that could be like in a sense like a cry for help when OpenSea or the Coinbase marketplace comes out, if
Right.
they have any sort of like pressure, then that's the way that OpenSea can
Yeah.
separate themselves.
That's a good point. I mean, that's exactly what a lot of these have been, right? It's like these, again, as I mentioned, are sort of customer acquisition things, right? Their behaviors meant to pull users in. So we reward you with a token if you use this product. That's how a lot of the Web3 token airdrops have been. You're exactly right. That would maybe be a great time for OpenSea to at least unveil some plans about that, specifically if Coinbase NFT pulls a ton of users. We have no clue what's going to happen. Of course, this is all speculation. But if Coinbase does roll out a really strong marketplace with lower fees and a nice user interface, and it stays up and works, right? Like it works constantly. That's, man, it could be dangerous. Now that doesn't mean OpenSea fades away. OpenSea's not going anywhere. They have too much money, too much foothold, too strong of a foothold right now, but really, really interesting. I want to transition a little bit beyond SOS, beyond OpenSea. Let's get into this piece that dropped on the site last week from Lucky Trader co-founder Jonathan Bales. 5 things he learned about investing in 2021. If you haven't already read it, please do. You can find it on the main site at luckytrader.com. There's a lot of really valuable insight here, which is always the case whenever Jonathan, puts pen to paper. One of my favorite things, though, that I think is really, great confluence of events here was the taxes part, and then this bias towards non-action, which is his 5th point. We were just talking about, like, how do you know whether or not to claim your SOS and then sell your SOS? And then if you did claim it right away and you sold it too early, you know what I mean? Like me, I sold it. If I go back to this SOS chart thing, I probably sold my SOS, the bulk of it, like in here. I don't know exactly when, but it would have been late Friday night, I think, that I sold it. It was like right before. So probably in this little uptick is when I sold mine. But silly me, if you think about the tax, plan for taxes, right? I just created another taxable event in 2021 by doing so. If I would have waited a few days, right? You have up until June to claim. If I would have waited a few days, I could have avoided that. So that's one key part from John's piece. But the second part here is this: have a bias towards non-action. So he mentions in here, biggest mistake he made in early days was buying and selling too frequently. And it wasn't a frequency of trade things here, but it was just, again, me looking to create action where action didn't necessarily need to be rushed into. Like I didn't need to rush into selling SOS. This is a unique situation, where you're kind of like given free money. So it's a little bit unique. But as it pertains to the NFT market as a whole, Lou, is this like one of those things where, you traded a lot this year, right? You sold apes early, you sold cool cats early. And I'm not trying to pick on you there. I've made plenty of mistakes, but like, is this something that as you head into 2022, like you are trying to put in place, or are you kind of, are you in your roots, in your, I don't even know what word I'm looking for, searching and coming up empty, but like, are you a trader at heart and you're going to be active?
I have somewhat, like, I get this point, and I think over time, like, I definitely agree with the point in general, but I do think if someone is trying to build their bankroll, then selling more frequently can make sense, because sometimes you're just grinding out the 0.1 ETH on things that aren't going to ever be much of anything. So I think the early days is when you can be grinding it and doing more buying and selling. Maybe not rush to sell, but it's sort of the idea I've been doing more recently, where I'm not like minting as many things. I'm not trying to make my portfolio more like good longer term holds versus just buying and trying to flip it for 0.1 ETH here, 0.2 ETH there. Because like you said, like if you're going into a project and you're just coming out of it with like 0.05 Ethereum of a gain because you flip it within a couple days, then the amount you're paying in gas basically is that as well. So like it wasn't really worth it for you. So I'm looking more towards things that can get you like zero point 0.5 Ethereum of gains, or like 1 Ethereum of gains, where you're holding it, you're buying something at 0.2 ETH that you want to hold until it gets up to at least 1 ETH, not trying to sell it at 0.3. So it makes sense to me because it's tough early on because you're trying to like gain a balance, because the bankroll is huge when it comes to these things, because there's going to be things like an art blocks drop that you need to have over an Ethereum ready in your wallet in case of a gas war, things like that. So it's good to have a bankroll. So if you're growing your bankroll, I understand trading more frequently, but I've definitely slowed over time once you realize how much you're actually doing. So um, I agree with the point in general, um, that you don't really want to be trading too often, because that's when you miss out on things, because you're just in the mindset of, oh, I got to get out of this as soon as possible. And then you're not thinking like, sometimes you got to just take a step back, zoom out, and look at the project like a Cool Cats. Cool Cats, the thesis was there. Thesis was always there. Same thing as like Bored Apes. Like the thesis is right, but in my mind, things getting up to 10 Ethereum didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So now that once you've seen it happen, you can like believe it happened. So that's where like right now with the Mutant Apes, I don't want to sell it this year because of the gains. And now it just keeps going up to the point where it's like, well, is there gonna be Jan 1 all of a sudden everyone starts, if everyone's thinking that same way, is it gonna then drop again? But um I don't want to have another taxable event. It's weird that like the first 6 months of the year you didn't care about it, but then like the last couple months, everything you're thinking about is coming back towards like the tax side of it.
Yep. No, that's good though. It's good to be considering that taxes, and of course, that's like point 4 from John's article. Taxes are important to understand and plan for. Definitely take advantage again of the end of year tax strategy piece from RKO Tax. If you haven't already, like just prepare yourself. There's a couple days left for you to potentially harvest losses where possible, or at least prepare yourself. Maybe you need to take a gain so that you can pay for gains that you didn't stash stuff away for. So just prepare yourself. Of course, do your own research. Please refer to real, definitely real consulting accountants, certified public accountants, whatever. Do not take your tax advice from just random people on Twitter, of course. You can learn a little bit from actual accountants at RKO Tax if you head to luckytrader.com. Crypto and NFT tax is what I need to know before 2022. One of the other things that like really key from this Bales article in my mind, what you were just talking about, kind of with the thesis regarding apes, the thesis regarding Cool Cats, and then 2022, we've mentioned a lot about P2E. Is this idea of investing in categories? I talked about Kobe from Up Only here recently as well. He calls it, the meta, right? Investing in the meta. I think they're talking about very, very similar things, though maybe they would define them quite a little bit differently. And kind of as Bales, walks through this, and I'm not going to read it all, but one important realization I've had is it's probably better to invest in categories than trying to pick individual winners from all over the place. We were just talking about this in regards to the token versus the NFT project thing, right? Like, so maybe you don't want to pick the winning NFT. You don't have time to pick the winning NFT as it pertains to metaverse, but you want to be invested in metaverse stuff. You could look towards that metaverse index, right? And he kind of walks through the categories he focused on this year and the kind of the conclusion of that thought process as the meta, or as like the theme changed here. So he went from, alternative investments to digital focus to crypto, DeFi, and NFTs. This is his work, right? This, to DeFi 2.0, collectibles, and then, games as well. He says, at least for me, and the way I think about the world, it's easiest to identify general trends from a macro perspective and learn those areas and get exposure to the entire category. This is something that for me, because of the relevance and the recency of both this Bales piece and then, Kobe, who I respect a whole ton as well, I've been thinking a lot about as it relates to going into 2022. So that's what I'd like to kind of shift the conversation and, call
Yeah.
it categories, call it meta, whatever. Are you, Lou, is this a
This,
like play to earn gaming for you? Is this like a buy the, sell the news, buy the rumor, whatever the hell, however that goes? Or are you actually expecting that 2022 is like full on game theme, meta, whatever?
yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think that per se, because there's only so many games that can actually be put out in that short amount of time. So I think there'll be a focus towards the ones that are coming out. Will I think there'll be a couple interesting ones, like if the Meta Heroes game, if we start getting that come out, because people have already been staking it for a little bit. There's obviously things coming up against Axie. Axie seems to be falling off as the superior game. There's other challengers. There's like the DeFi Kingdoms that I've been in, that's coming out, and Illuvium is the big one that was also in that index. Like, is Sandbox and Decentraland, are they going to take more of a big like role in the space? So to me, like I agree with that idea, where right now the way I'm thinking of it, and the reason I'm not like buying into these pumps right now of the NFTs, is I feel like the whole PFP thing was the 2021 meta, as you'd say. But this next round of things, I think people are going to want to get into things like DeFi, things like P2E games, because in my mind, that's what this technology is going to strive in. Less so like just randomizing a picture, and then people use that for their
Yeah.
PFPs. There's gonna obviously be like these blue chips that are still doing things that are like, is Bored Ape gonna have a game? They're still trying to figure out their mobile game. Um, Treeverse, that's another big one. Like, I did an update on the Lucky Trader site last week on Treeverse. They're starting to get up and running with their mobile game, which, I mean, it looks pretty cool. Like, I don't have any Treeverse stuff. I minted the land, but the issue I have with all these things, and this is where 2022 I think is going to help. Um, all these things are so far in advance for me that it's hard to jump on board from like day one. Of like, you see Gala up there from all of their Fox
Oh, the Gala
gaming.
FUD from the other day is really great.
Yeah, so like their one, Axie is still like king when it
Yeah.
comes to these things, but that's because they're furthest along. Like, someone like a Zed could make a big run this upcoming year
Did you
because
know,
they're built out.
if I can hop in there for a second, did you know that I didn't know this until not that long ago? And of course, if you're big into Zed Run, please go to knowyourhorses.com, Lucky Trader product, premier spot for Know Your Horses, right? Zed, data and analytics. The guys over at Know Your Horses are fantastic. The tools are incredible. Did you know that Zed has had a token on their roadmap the entire time? Did you know that?
Des, right?
Dez? Is
DEZ
it
or
called?
DEX?
I didn't know. I don't know what the
Yeah,
token's called, but I didn't realize that until recently. But
yeah,
yeah, this is a list
I've done that.
of
I don't know how you would
P2E
earn it per
tokens.
se, but yeah, the other one on this list, well, there's a couple on this list that I'd make note. Star Atlas, I saw that one.
Yeah.
D Race, that's like the Zed competitor.
Right. Is it on? It's on Binance though, right? Where'd it go? It's down here. It is a
That's the
Zed
thing, is like
competitor.
a lot of these, like Binance is, that might
Yeah.
be,
Binance
they
Smart
might
Chain
be
ecosystem.
bigger in gaming world. Like Binance and Wax are like the gaming platforms right now, but I know Solana is building towards it. Obviously, like Axie is on Ronin,
Mhm.
their own thing.
Yeah. So this is
Aurori is on Solana. I saw they were on that list too.
yeah. Yep. And again, this is just again, nothing here financial advice, but this is just a list of top play to earn tokens just purely based on market cap. So not like a list of most interesting or whatever. Just again, purely based on the market cap of these. It is including the metaverse, the big metaverses, Decentraland Sandbox. Within it even counts, Wax.
It's interesting that
Totally
Wax
in.
is like considered
Like
as
some of
well.
these I've never heard of. This is, I think, an awesome way to start your research about play to earn games is look at, and you can find other lists, of course, but look at
Depth Radar does good ones.
yeah, look at something like this and just scroll through and get familiar with some of the names. And then as you start to see them more frequently on Twitter as well, Decentral Games, right, which is in Decentraland, they're starting to do that whole ice poker thing, which is really, really cool. Hopefully we'll have more information about that. Krabata, we've seen things like this. Just a quick scroll through. This is part of the way that I start to familiarize myself and maybe narrow where my focus goes is get familiar. This is lazy research, right? All I'm doing is taking a look at names and kind of laughing about the types of these coins and whatever they're called. But you get it in your head now, and then as you start to scroll your crypto Twitter, NFT Twitter feed, and you start to see names more and more, that's kind of that signal to me that okay, now it's time to potentially pay attention here or to do a little bit of a deep dive. And yeah, I mean, you can get in here and you can take a look at some of these tokens. And again, it does not mean that the token will be valuable at all, right? The games and the tokens, there's not necessarily a super clear match in terms of correlation of success there. But just a way for you to quickly identify some potential upcoming games. And if you don't wish to play the game, but you wish to potentially get exposure to it, you may be able to do so directly through the token, right? You guys did a great stream a few weeks ago now, Lou. Crypto Raiders, how to get started. Crypto Raiders, there are assets that you can purchase to play the game, but you can also just buy the in-game currency should you wish to get exposure to the game in some way without actually playing or without actually purchasing the NFTs, right? So it's going to be interesting throughout the course of 2022, especially if this is what people expect it to be. Most people expect this to be a super strong theme for 2022. I don't know what to expect. I don't know. A lot of my hardship here is these games for the most part, and I've seen other talk about this. The games for the most part are not fun and not good. Do you have any
game? Yeah.
Do you have any play to earn games
a lot
you
of those. I mean, the thing is, a lot of them aren't games in the sense of a console game. And even the ones that are, seems like when it comes down to it, you still have to get enough returns. That's the thing. Someone made a point in our Discord, actually, who was saying a lot of people that want these games don't even play games. They want the earnings of it. So I think there's a balance in that sense. I think for a long-term game, it needs to be fun. But in the short term, is it getting people money is what people are going to be focused on. So I think there's going to be some of these that are going to be fun games that are going to separate themselves because of that, because people are going to just want to play the game. But a lot of them right now aren't about a physical game involved. Even Axie, people don't have fun playing the game of Axie. I think Illuvium could be one that people have fun with because there's other games similar to that have been. Something that Treeverse is doing also kind of has that Zelda Breath of the Wild idea. Right. So it's are people going to be playing the games? That's where I think I've sort of shifted my focus in a way towards DeFi stuff, because I think that's what people are going to actually be using. And software wise, that's where I mean, for DeFi Kingdoms, right now, it's really just a DeFi side. It's not really a game yet. So I don't know. I think for games to last, they need to have a fun component. People still play Zed because they are having fun racing their horses, and you can make money doing it, but they can enter different tournaments, they can play with their friends, and they can, you know, um, that side of it. Whereas a lot of these like play to earn games as of now just have no really component of the playing that's any sort of fun. Like you go
Yeah.
like DeFi Land, the Solana version has little mini games and you can go in and play them, but um are they like overly fun? Not really. So I think you have to have any good game, the component that's important is like the addictive factor is
Yeah.
how I would word it. So,
Yep.
um, can you get people addicted to playing the game? And that would, I think, bring the success.
Yeah, you mentioned DeFi Land, which is basically DeFi Kingdoms on Solana, right? Just a quick shout out to Jacob Cohen, who's been building these pieces for us each week around the blockchain. So most of our conversations on this stream and the coverage that we provide is surrounding the NFT ecosystem on Ethereum. That is where the bulk of activity happens. But if you are curious about some of these other NFT ecosystems like Flow or Solana or Wax, each week we kind of do like an around the horn of top news and notes. Lou mentioned DeFi Land, which of course is included here as kind of the top topic in terms of Solana NFTs. And, we go through those others. So a great resource available at luckytrader.com if you're interested in some of the other NFT ecosystems. I'm with you, Lou. I don't know what to expect. And I'm actually like a little, like, part of the contrarian in me is wondering a little if play to earn game is kind of like a fake out for
Overrated.
2022.
Yeah.
Because the big thing is like there was a this from Piston. You're saying I shouldn't buy a Star Atlas ship for 100K before the game's released. This is where we're at. Like a bulk of the games
A
like
lot
are
of
not
them.
are
Yeah.
not released yet. And we've spent a lot of time on this stream and others talking about trying to look towards those those games and ecosystems that are playing for the long term. But in some of those cases, playing for the long term means they just started building the game and you could not or may not realize any return on investment for a long, long time. And we have been trained in this market to focus on very short periods of time because of the speed at which it operates. So it's going to be really interesting in 2022 to see what happens.
Yeah, I think the issue for me is that like people start talking about it and then overhype it. And this happens with like everything. And goes back to your buy the rumor, sell the news idea is people will get all excited about things like right now it's like milk token, ape token, and people are all excited about it. And then once it comes out and you find out the specifics of it, then there's a handful of people that get pissed and just start dumping it off. And that's where with these games, like people are going to be all excited for it. And then they're going to come out and be like, wait, it earns me $1 a day and then just be over it. So I think there's too many people like that in this industry that bring it back down. So that's part of the issue I have with it, where I want to play a game that I'm actually having fun playing, but you also kind of need the whales in a
Yeah.
way as well to be investing in it. Like you said, like someone has to be out there spending 100K on one of these ships and feel like we can earn them that 100K back by playing the game.
Right.
And that's kind of the tough part with some of this. That's what a lot of people are doing, buying sandbox land right now, is like, okay, 5 years from now I'll be able to rent this out for X amount of dollars. So it's tough. I think a lot of the games, it's just going to be one of those waves where you want to get into the first couple and then people are going to start copying them and then it's going to get oversaturated real quick. Like that's my concern with it.
Yeah.
So.
I'm like cautiously optimistic about PTE. I'm not, we've talked a lot about this, but I'm not a gamer by nature. So a lot of this is a struggle for me anyway to like understand, well, one, what is fun? Like I don't think I have a great grip on what a fun game is because a lot of the fun games to the majority of people are not particularly fun to me. But I've also seen, and I'm struggling to find the Twitter thread now, but I've also seen like some really strong criticisms about P to E and like the potential mechanics behind everything. And I think it is good. We get inside these echo chambers in the NFT space and like Web3 in general about it all being good, 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 up only, yay, positive stuff. And there are lots and lots of positives and lots of pros, but like it is always good to get a little bit of a slap in the face and dose of reality regarding some of the strong and worthwhile criticisms for each of these particular metas or categories. And so I think play to earn games is one where like, just because you hear this criticism with blockchain, right? Like, well, why does it need to be on a blockchain? Well, in all instances, it doesn't need to be. And you're going to have the same thing for games. Like, why does it need to be P to E? Like, why does it need a token? Why does it have to be? And a lot of the answers, or the answer could be a lot of the time, oh, it doesn't need to be. And so my, like, maybe the most skeptical I am here is that everybody building a game is forcing in a token in some way, is forcing in some sort of mechanic that makes it feel like play to earn, to capitalize on the fervor and frenzy of this theme, when in reality they'd be best suited not doing that, or maybe building in a different way. And so I don't know what to expect. I don't know how it's going to unfold. I think the easiest way to create a winner, in this next theme is build a good game, like build a game that people want to play, and then figure out the token part later. If you focus too much, if you're the game developer and you focus too much on making it almost like Ponzi-nomic, like, right, where like those who play are going to reap rewards, quite literally financial rewards, then you run into what Axie, I think, is run into, right? Which is where it's like the game sucks. Have you heard anybody ever say that the Axie game is fun, is good? Like, how do you withstand that if the game is literally terrible? Like, can it live forever or no? I don't know.
That's the issue, yeah. And I think part of Axie, their tokenomics is somewhat of an issue long term, I think. But because there's not a cap on their the tokens. So I don't know, maybe from the game standpoint it's good, but not from like an investor standpoint. So that's the difference for me, is it's like you have to be able to bridge the gap between investors and players of the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So that's another thing with like Zed, is at one point Zed has so many horses. How do you give value to all of them? Like if they're a worse racer, how are you going to incentivize people to still want to race them? So there's a lot of in-game economics that gets thrown into it that you don't think about early on in the game, but then like over time. So yeah, I think that's been one of the issues. You have to worry about like balancing it. The Owners Club was one like that, where no one wants a Titans tight end card. They're never going to use that because it's never going to get 20 points in a given week. So then they created these lowball tourneys, and these like tourneys where you could only enter tight ends into, and things like that. So for me, a lot of it is how are the creators of the game going to adjust along the way, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to know up front, but I think you can kind of see how these teams work in the buildup and assume that this is like a team with like good heads on their shoulders and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the like the ability to be responsive and reflexive to the overall themes and the overall undertones and sentiment will be really worthwhile. The cool part about the speed at which this Web3, whatever you want to call it, operates is the innovation, like, just goes full speed constantly. And so a lot of these teams, a lot of these organizations, a lot of the games, and the themes as well, and the market cycles, like all of it moves at light speed pace. And those who are able to operate and be very flexible and nimble and keep up with all that stuff seem to be those who are most successful. So I think you're totally right. Those who will adapt, change, innovate, try things, basically just try random shit and see what happens. Those are going to be the teams that do really, really well. I think in many ways, like that's kind of what Bored Ape Yacht Club is. They had a roadmap. Like if you look at roadmap 1.0, mutants were on there kind of, right? Like there was talk about the arcade machine, which was supposed to give like a breeding mechanism. But more or less, like, you kind of like saw the success, saw the themes of what was happening, and they iterated upon them in their own way. And then now everybody else has done that on top of, apes, right? So the teams that are like willing to invest themselves and their time and like their energy into trying to do new things and innovate in new innovative ways are those that I think will see the most success. So it'll be interesting. Before we sign off here, Lou, and we have a piece coming shortly that's going to showcase the Lucky Trader teams thoughts and opinions from 2021 and heading into 2022. But this is our last Monday stream for 2021. Any like last final thoughts about 2021, 2022 you'd like to share?
I think it's been a crazy year, and I'd say don't expect next year to be the same.
Of course.
I think we could have been in a once in a lifetime kind of year.
Yeah.
But you never know. Like, not to say things won't still pump next year or there won't still be success stories, but I think there's a lot of things that happen this year that are going to be a one-off, which it's just good to go into the future thinking that way. And then, hey, at best, like it's a better year next year. And it's crazy because we have Coinbase NFT coming out and just more mass adoption. So the upside's still there on things like that, but don't expect things to just be like 20 projects pumping out that are all successful every day or anything like that. So 2021 was a great year, and looking forward to see what 22 really starts bringing. All these roadmaps that Q1 2022 and like things like that. It'll be nice to see which of these projects actually start hitting those roadmaps.
Yes, I think 2022, in my opinion, is going to be the year of, execution. You're totally right. You have a lot of teams that built like massive war chests worth of money that they made during like this insane bull run. And now it's time to, kind of put up or shut up for a lot of these projects. And so I think we will find, and we've already started to see this, in my opinion anyway, where money has started to flow to the projects that have been able to sustain themselves and have been communicating and building community. And those who have not, like, don't get their second pump, right? They get the first pump, but then, if they don't do anything or they don't execute, they don't ever get it again. And I think what we'll see in 2022 and what we've seen throughout the last month and a half, 2 months, is that the money is flowing into those projects that are most notable and have indicated that they are hopefully here to stay. What that means duration wise, I don't know. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be 1 year, which is a long time. CryptoPunks themselves are only like 4 years old. Isn't that insane? So it'll be really interesting. I think that is a perfect set of advice, though, to tame expectations. Top Shot is a great microcosm for, at least in my opinion, for the entirety of this year. Will we ever see a thing like that again in Top Shot in particular? I don't think so. And maybe that's exactly, maybe that's your micro version of the NFTs as a whole. Maybe Bored Apes and Punks stay where they're at, for a long time. But you might not see 0.08 to 60 ETH in 1 year ever again. Right. You might not see every single project going up. So I think I'm going to steal and just piggyback on your advice. I think taming expectations going into 2022 is like a fantastic piece of advice. The other thing that I have continued to harp on is, be okay with like missing out on stuff. The speed at which this place moves is good and fun and presents lots of opportunity. But it also can make you feel very badly for missing out. It can make you feel very overwhelmed. So please do enjoy the remainder of your holiday stretch here. It's going to be a little quieter at Lucky Trader here for the next few days as well before we head into 2022. But thank you for anyone who was here today. If you watched, interacted with, followed, liked, subscribed in any way to all Lucky Trader stuff, greatly, greatly appreciated. We are only a couple months old. As well, only 2.5 months old here at Lucky Trader, but hopeful to be bringing better and bigger things in 2022. That's it for us here today, folks, though. Appreciate it. You can find us on Twitter at Lucky Trader HQ and our newsfeed at Lucky NFT News. For Lou and I will see you guys again later this week and then heading into 2022. Thanks so much.